the COVID cases in the athletic department are down to 2 out of 190 student athletes that have been tested. How positive of a development is that to you?
It's very positive. I think, once the athletes, took their break, they followed, the protocol that our trainers and doctors told them. And, I think we tested not only the football, but we had soccer and the 2 basketballs and volleyball in those numbers of 190. So it's good that we're only managing 2 right now. And so it's good news. Absolutely.
Is there an element of, hey, the football team got scared straight, basically, by what happened there when the workouts were shut down?
I think it was a pretty, important message that they saw not only how quickly it ran through them, but just how important it is to, the social distance, wear a mask. Again, I think, wearing mask is so critically important for, all of us, really. But for them, and then, again, when they're out working out, obviously they're not wearing masks, but I think a lot of the physical stuff of high-fiving and, all that stuff is probably, slowed down quite a bit, if not stopped. I think it was a good learning lesson for all of us, really.
Do you know, and this is a question, obviously, that could be asked to those within the football staff, might have a better idea, but are all of the players that had left to go back home after workouts were canceled back now in Manhattan?
Yeah, they're all back. They all got back. I think they got back on the 5th or the 6th, and that was part of the retesting that we did, which I guess was last week, before we could start the workouts today. So, yeah, I think all of them are that I know of.
Gene Taylor is talking with us. Well, some good news on the local front with K-State's COVID tests. On a national scale, it has not been trending in a positive direction either for the country or for the college football season. In particular, people taking note last week of the Big Ten and the Pac-12 opting to go to just a conference-only season. Now, Bob Bowlesby has since come out and said, hey, at the Big 12 level, we're not going to do that yet. What was your response, Gene, to seeing the Big Ten and the Pac-12 going that route?
Well, we were all surprised, I think, by the Big Ten. The Pac-12 is a little different. UCLA and USC have some major issues, not within their program, but just in Los Angeles. I mean, they are, I don't think, even allowed to come on campus. And so in terms of their ability to be, kind of fair and equitable with the rest of the Pac-12 in terms of workouts and voluntary workouts, they just don't have access right now. So I think the Pac-12's decision was a little different. The Big Ten did surprise a lot of folks. They don't have those issues. When we talked amongst the Big 12 ADs and with Bob, it was like we still have time. You could have announced that if it is a conference-only decision by announcing it August 1st versus July 8th, the impact's still the same. So could you give it a little more time to see where this goes? Do we get it under control? How are the teams progressing? So that's kind of where we were collectively as ADs and our commissioner was, we still have time. And our doctors are telling us that too. Let's continue to, monitor it and see where it goes. Each state obviously is different. So, yeah, we were a little surprised by the Big Ten, not quite as surprised by the Pac-12 just because I think that the issues with USC and UCLA. So
you mentioned the date, August 1st. Is that around when you feel like the Big 12 would need to have a decision on that front?
Yeah, we've kind of, I don't know that's the exact date. I hate to throw exacts out there, but, I think end of July, first part of August, we're going to need to have a pretty good idea for our non-conference opponents, where we are, and just kind of where this is trending still. I guess if it, still trending in an upward direction across the country, a pretty clear message. And again, I think our docs want, we have an advisory group of doctors from the Big 12 and then a couple of national folks that I think they just want to see where this is heading from a national perspective as well.
How confident would you say you are right now in a fall season happening still?
I'm still pretty confident. As every day goes by and, more and more conferences are canceling. Now, those conferences that are canceling, the Patriot League, the Ivy League, those folks, they're different, right? They're different from a financial perspective. They're, they just have always they pretty much compete within themselves. They do play, Power Fives, I guess, for, the FCS, particularly the Patriot League does. And so, yeah, you watch more and more of those move away from the fall. I still think we still have time to make those decisions, and we need to wait as long as we can and see where we are.
Gene Taylor is talking with us. I actually really liked a letter that was put out by one of your colleagues and Jamie Pollard at Iowa State today, where he was outlining what the monetary impact would be of no football season. And basically, I thought the point he was making overall could be boiled down to this, him saying some people have incorrectly framed the issue as safety versus revenue generation. The simple fact is that reality lies somewhere in the middle. Do you feel like that's a pretty accurate statement here when you're trying to balance, okay, what happens with player safety if we have them go out and play games versus what happens to the community, jobs lost, everything that would go along with the football season not happening?
Yeah, it is a combination. I applaud Jamie for putting that out there. Good for him. I actually have had kind of the similar conversations in various radio interviews. It's not. Yes, it is. There is a financial component. Don't get me wrong, but there's also a financial component to our community in terms of hotels and restaurants and grocery stores and liquor stores and all that other stuff. That if we don't, play or we don't have fans, that's another major hit. Obviously, it's financial for us as a department. Obviously, it impacts the university as well. But when you talk to our athletes, they want to play, and they want to be able to go out and play their season. They don't want to wait till the spring. They don't want to have what happened to the baseball and the spring sports last year, or basketball with the interruption where they didn't get to play their championships. These athletes want to play, and now those that are nervous, they would have the option to not lose their scholarship if they don't want to play. We would work those things out, but the majority of our kids want to play, and they want to do it safely. It's our job to make it as safe as possible. Getting as far as we can down the path of where we can to say, okay, what's the final verdict here? But let's do everything we possibly can to allow these athletes to play their sport. And if we can at some point, we'll make that decision. But it is more than just a financial thing. It clearly impacts a lot of areas, and I applaud Jamie for putting that out there.
How viable to you is a spring football season?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't really looked at it. There's a lot of issues. Obviously, weather is a part of the issue. You wanted to start the season in March, April, May. How does TV balance that with all the other things they have going on? You probably have to start your workouts in February. Certainly, as we have an indoor facility, we could do it. A lot of places up north would be a really challenge for their weather. Being able to play their games possibly in early March would be not fun. But we have, cold games in November, so I guess that's kind of a balance. I think the biggest thing would be what would you do with your seniors that, want to try to play for the NFL or try to get in the NFL. They would, the NFL said they're not going to move their draft. How many seniors wouldn't play? Just to make sure they do have an opportunity to participate in the draft process. And there are just a lot of moving parts that, I guess if worst comes to worst, we'll figure it out. But I think you would have teams that would look a lot different. And then, we talk about player safety now with COVID. What's the safety factor in having them play a season in March, April, May, come back and start again in July for the fall season and play another football season starting in September? What's the safety factor there? I think all those things have to be considered.
Gene Taylor talking with us here on the game. I'm spitballing a little bit here, but it seemed to me like basketball would be an easier thing to pull off. It is indoors, but just so many, the numbers of people involved are so much smaller. If there's no football or football's delayed, is there a possibility? Has anybody talked about? Is there a chance you could get basketball going anyway at the same time? Where does that stand?
No, I shouldn't say no at all. We haven't really had any conversations about that. I've heard some, outside conversations, outside being just a few folks across the country saying, do we need to start basketball earlier and get some of these games in instead of waiting until November? Do you start them in October? Just if there is an interruption, you can get the majority of your games in and then come back up and pick up the second half. later. But we haven't had any real detailed conversations about that. But yeah, I guess it's a possibility. I've heard some people say let's not even start basketball till after the first of the year. But then you've got a lot of games crammed in a short period of time. So, just a lot of things we'd have to work through.
How much planning have you guys done in the event that there is no football season? And do you know, Jamie Pollard had quoted that $40 million number. Do you know about what your loss would be in that case?
No, not yet. I mean, just a lot would depend, right? I mean, how many of our season ticket holders and donors would, want to move their money towards next year's season? How many would possibly leave it as a donation and get a tax rebate or a tax refund based on that as a donation, as a pure donation? How many would want refunds right now and start over? And but if you just round numbers, our season tickets, football season tickets are around 12 million, and our Ahern Fund, which is our annual giving, that's around 15 million. But again, that covers all sports on the Ahern Fund. But then you've got your Big 12 TV. We don't know what that would be. This last year we've been running around the 36 million in TV revenue, but that also includes basketball. So it's a little more difficult to come up with a number. I haven't really done the math. I'm sure we could, but it would be significant. There's no question about it.
Are there creative ways that you can go about? This is where I'm way over my head, but getting loans, figuring out a way to make some of that money back short term.
Well, yeah, I don't know. How many options. I mean, certainly lines of credits and loans. How many banks out there with what they're facing would be willing to do that? Based on future earnings, what if, next year it continues and you have even less of a football? I mean, obviously we rely so much on our TV money and conference monies that, I don't know how many banks out there, but I mean, that's certainly something we would consider and look at to help us get us through for the year. How much of our reserves could we use, in terms of that would impact our financial status in terms of, some of our, construction financing and the debt financing that we have. So there's a lot of things we'd have to sit down and kind of work through, but we'd look at as many options as we possibly could to help us through the year.